tell us a little bit about yourself. You come from a super exciting background. Tell us a little bit about you and tell us a little bit about Radical Numerics.
Yeah, of course. So my journey into computer science actually starts from another field, control theory, robotics. I was born in Italy. That's where I studied, University of Bologna, automation engineering. I was thinking about fairly niche topics such as sliding mode control, which is this set of techniques for controlling nonlinear systems, giving discontinuous inputs to make sure they stick to a trajectory. So these are the things that a control theorist kind of thinks about using tools from signal processing, structured linear algebra, and things like this. And I was super fortunate to be able to spend a few years in China. So there was this double degree program, my second year of undergrad. 10 people from my cohort were selected to spend a year in Shanghai, studying the same things, but in a completely different context. And you can imagine that changed a lot of my thinking, my career. I liked it so much that I then decided to spend more time in Asia for my master's. I went to KAIST in South Korea, in Daejeon, which is sometimes described as the MIT of Korea. Koreans like to to say that it's a very STEM focused university, extremely frontier robotics work. They've done some of the first kind of humanoid robotics stuff that actually worked. And it was during that time in South Korea that I started self-teaching AI in computer science. So of course I had previously covered some basics of computer science, as most robotics and double E students do. But it was, C and the basics of systems, nothing too specific to AI. And it was still a time where not everything was about AI. Like now, it was clear that something super interesting was happening, and all these amazing online courses were popping up. For me, the best introduction was Jeremy Howard's Fast AI set of courses, where he was taking an extremely pragmatic approach to teaching AI and actually building useful things with AI, training loops. I remember training my first ResNets and studying, different data augmentation methods to push up accuracy on CIFAR 10 and so on via his courses. And so I was trying to reconciliate these two interests of mine, so control theory, more mathy topics with AI, more practical AI that worked in vision and language. And it happened at the time, I believe it was 2018, this paper from a group in Toronto came out and won Best Paper Award at NeurIPS, called Neural Ordinary Differential Equations, which caught my eye because it seemed to, these folks seem to have found a sweet spot between my two areas of interest right at the intersection. And I was trying to find places to explore with my longtime friend and also co-founder of Radical Numerics, Stefano Massaroli, also Italian. At that time was in Japan, still studying control. We're trying to find a place to get our foot in the door, basically, for AI. And so we spent a few years doing research on these objects, these neural differential equations, which are basically a tool. It's basically an attempt to shoehorn differential equations into model architecture research, and trying to find applications both in traditional AI domains such as computer vision, but also scientific machine learning. So trying to bake some structure of the system you're trying to model or approximate into the neural network. It's a continuous time system. If you're trying to learn to solve partial differential equations, for example, or some kind of physical system, people thought it would be a good idea to try and hybridize the two. And I got my first few papers published in NeurIPS, so my first super fun conference experiences back then, and I was pondering whether PhD. So my I was never, the PhD or nothing kid. I sort of always just followed, um, making decisions on maybe like short to medium term. I certainly did not pick my my area of study, thinking my life mission is pushing frontier knowledge and on control theory, non-linear control, or something like that. And so I was considering just going to industry and working in a robotics startup in Boston at the end of my master's. But then COVID hit, and that turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because I ended up being stuck in Korea for an extra year, doing more research, publishing more and more papers and new rips and other conferences. And my advisor at the time was just suggesting that I apply to Stanford. I think you can get in, and I did. But I know I had my plan B's and my plan C's. Certainly not expecting. You don't really, you can't really plan around getting CS PhD acceptance at Stanford. But that turned out to happen, and it changed my career. I started working with Stefano Erman, which I believe was also on this podcast. One of the two people in this latter part of my journey that influenced most of my thinking and my academic career. So academic and also non-academic. The other being Chris Ray, both of whom I'm extremely grateful for. And yeah, at Stanford, I kept trying to find applications of these ideas from control and the signal processing to scientific machine learning. And then I was exposed to a lot of really cool machine learning systems work. I was, my first year at Stanford, that was the year that Flash Attention came out, for example, and I had, rubbed shoulders with some of the folks there. Some of the first ideas around state space models and some of these alternative architectures, which are concepts that I was very familiar with from my days in control theory. And I just got closer and closer to core kind of machine learning systems, research, model architectures, scaling, inference, which is where I ended up spending most of my time in the past 3-4 years. And then that led to experience at Together AI as one of the earliest, one of the first scientists at the company, where I was trying to scale some of this research on new model architectures with the AINA operators, which were an attempt to bring convolutions back into the spotlight for language modeling after they had been completely replaced by attention in language modeling, similarly to how attention also replaced RNNs and LSTMs, which were the original approach for language modeling, for example. It was this bespoke operator layer that combined a few convolutions and a few other things to try and replace attention in a transformer-like architecture. So trying to get that to scale as much as I could. We trained the first hybrid convolution attention models that worked at scale with striped AINA in 2023. And then I kept pushing on this architecture and systems and efficiency along all axes. Spent a lot of time thinking about edge inference, neural architecture search at Liquid, and then eventually kind of leading to Radical Numerics.
Awesome. So clearly, as I think the audience can smell, Michael is no average Joe here. He is truly incredible, and always great to see another one from Italy, just like Stefano. I mean, Stefano, I think, went to University of Padova for undergrad. And as we can see, Stefano is quite legendary. And we obviously don't have to tell you that he is one of our favorite professors of all time. Definitely a great friend of the podcast. Okay, so let's go through some of this stuff, right? So I'm smelling like you were involved with a lot of different entities, right? Like I think part of this has to do with like the Chris Ray Mafia out of Stanford, and in many ways also the Stefano Ramon Mafia out of Stanford. But like Cartesia with SSM stuff, right? Like Together AI, like maybe Liquid AI, although that's more of an MIT thing than a Stanford thing. And then now Radical Numerics, right? So like clearly there's a lot of different startups that you've been involved with. Now, it is just part of the DNA of Stanford to be involved with startups, but there's also like kind of a question of like what startups to be involved with. I mean, a lot of this stuff is stuff that like naturally progresses, right? Like, you see Karan and Albert working on SSM stuff, and it's like, whoa, this is interesting. Like, we want to collaborate, right? Or you're seeing like, like some work going on it together, and you're like, okay, maybe I want to collaborate with that. I guess the question really is like, what prompted you to start your own company as opposed to continue working at one of those companies, continue leading initiatives at Cartesia or at Together. Like, I guess like what made you feel so strongly that like we need a brand new company to do this, and like we need to build something new as opposed to like maybe joining an existing company and doing it. And then maybe more so like what do you sort of think is like your unique insight here, right? So like clearly you have a very deep, research background. Stefano does as well, and like obviously all of his students are incredible. Including his students Aditya and Volo, who are now part of Inception. I guess like how do you sort of think about like the type of work that you're doing, and like maybe like what makes you and kind of this path and like this vertical that you want to dominate with radical numerics different than like something that another one of this us other students in Stefano's lab might end up doing.
Yeah, I mean, this is maybe the question, especially for people spending time at Stanford. When is it the right time to start something? Should I join something else? Should I even think about industry? And it is a tricky question. Certainly for my first experiences in this Stanford-ish ecosystem, including Together, that was primarily driven by um, the need for resources to scale ideas. So I certainly had my academic hat on at the time. I believed in what I was doing, and the bet then required fairly substantial investment into infrastructure to scale. Like we all know, training language models is expensive. Today, a lot more than when I was doing that together, but still quite expensive, and certainly not an academic something within academic budget. And so that was the first motivation for me to explore around. Um, I found that there is a way to marry the two, deep research and industry, even in startups, which is maybe not really traditional advice. Typically, and now we live in crazy days, but generally speaking, startups are they're not known to be prioritizing, deep research. Only a few select startups do that. But the pressure of product market fit and the ecosystem get to you at some point. Right? So it's tough. But my experience has been good with that.
Yeah,
As to why radical numerics and why not, I just think we developed well the founding team, the core team Radical Numerics. We had all known each other for years. We knew we wanted to do something together. So there's a team component, and we all felt very strongly that we wanted our own entity, and that we had a different vision, a unique vision that couldn't quite fit with a lot of the. It's not necessarily all about the tech, although tech and vision for the tech is a big component. But there's certainly a team and culture component. Like culture for us, Radical Numerics is extremely important. We're trying to balance, trying to retain the feel of an AI lab while building a company that can grow and scale. That is top concern.
yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this concept, and we're gonna get into the heavy duty like research paper soon. But like briefly, like let's talk a little bit about this concept of building something that can compete with the Frontier Model Lab at a significantly smaller company, right? Like I think this is something like we had Ari Morkos from Datology on recently, right? And like I think they've done kind of a brilliant job of this, like 30 to 40 people, like sort of like hammering away at this really really difficult problem, right? Of like how do we find the optimal subset of data to train a model on in order to maximize performance? A lot of data attribution stuff, like obviously very very exciting research. But like it is like it is really hard because like they're like tomorrow, right? OpenAI, Anthropic, so on and so forth. A lot of these frontier model labs where they have infinite people, can constantly just keep on hiring new people, and like yes, it'll take time for them to like ramp up, but like there's no real moat in the sense where like in research, right? Like your moat is the research, but like it really actually I think your moat really is technical talent density in some sense, right? Because it's like I guess like what stops, any other startup from doing the exact same thing. I think the way that we kind of think about it at Delta and it is like research and application are kind of two different areas, and like maybe like the way we see it is like within AI there's kind of three verticals. There's like application, research, and infrastructure, right? And so like base 10 and modal would go into infrastructure. Application would be things like Decagon, Sierra, Harvey, so on and so forth. And then like research would be, like at the smaller side, things like thinking machines, periodic labs, so on and so forth. And like this is kind of the way that we see things. I'm curious, like from your perspective, like for these like more small research, startups, right? It's like the ones that are trying to compete with frontier model labs, right? Which it seems like Radical Numerics is one of. To like a broader extent, there seems to be a bunch of other startups that are starting to pop up, as is, expected with the Stanford student population. And like, how do you actually compete though, right? Like, there's got to be like some competitive advantage, and it's kind of unclear like what that is. I'm curious, like from a leadership perspective, right? Like, how do you sort of think about this? Like, how have you gone about convincing people to join who ask you these questions? Like what's your thought process here?
Yeah. Of course. I wouldn't say Radical Numerics is trying to compete with OpenAI and Anthropic. I think you can have AI labs that focus on different things. Well, it is true that OpenAI, for example, is investing a lot on expanding in breadth, kind of capturing more and more applications, right? Expanding both vertically, kind of deep technology, but also we're seeing that on applications. There are areas that are still not covered by the labs, and it is tough because when we think about AI is a technology that will bring value to pretty much every single aspect of our lives. So I don't really see a complete monopoly and dominance of OpenAI. I guess kind of the core philosophical views that led us to Radical Numerics and the approach we're taking to the technology are that we're spending way too much on building frontier AI systems, right? So we all know it's hundreds of millions, billions, and it's a lot of cost on infrastructure, obviously, but also talent that is hard to find. And I do not believe us to be even close to the optimal. And part of the reason why I think is the technology here has evolved so quickly that we as a community, so Frontier Labs, have prioritized speed more than efficiency at every step. Now, obviously, the infrastructure is extremely optimized and all of that. But if we think about the paradigm shifts that have occurred in AI in the past, even couple of years, things like more RL-heavy pre-training and things like this, that requires a pretty substantial modification to infrastructure. And so things evolve too fast for full optimization to have taken place, which, by the way, as a consequence, means we currently are not able, I think, to supply to provide as many AI systems as there should be in the world. I think the debate, the common debate in the Bay Area of monolithic models versus many kind of smaller swarms working together. I subscribe to the second one. I think that's the feature. It will be very capable frontier-ish models that work together, but it will be a lot more of them, a lot more specialized to domains and tasks. And we're not yet there where we need to we have the speed and velocity to build these models. Like where we think about what's happening in the open source, for example, we are not even able to provide as a thinking about the Western community, we're not even able to provide models in the language space, right, that compete in terms of quality, never mind every other potential application. By application, I mean things as disparate as biology, right, or engineering and design, or things that may have a language interface but involve substantially different tweaks and integration with the workflows of experts in the vertical, right? So imagine, a world where we can do this a lot faster and a lot cheaper. The second thing is a belief that I developed during my past few years in research is that I think AI, the recipes that bring us to intelligence, are a lot more than the community. There's a lot more of them than we often think about. And I first saw this in model architectures. There are entire classes of architectures that bring you to good model, and they have substantially different computational profiles. We just happen to take one particular path. But if we truly want to find like a slightly less suboptimal local optimum, we have to enable faster exploration. So this is where a lot of our automation work is coming in. So to go back to your question, like how do you compete or not? I think it's a combination of finding different areas, and B, focusing on bringing the cost down as a first priority.
Okay.
So investing in automation and infrastructure.
Makes sense. Yeah, no, I think completely agree, right? I think infra is super important in many ways. Like people who neglect infra are about to get destroyed very fast by the bigger labs and by basically thinking machines and the small startups that know to start with efficiency and ML systems and hire all of the ML systems legends, including Song Lin, who was also episode 15 on our podcast. So congrats to her for joining. And yeah, so I think that all makes sense. Okay, so in the interest of time, we'll actually just skip over going over your papers because I think that like a lot of this stuff is going to be relatively intuitive, and I think really kind of the unlock is for people in the audience to hear these lessons, which I think you've done a great job of elucidating of like things that people like they see on LinkedIn or whatever, like, oh, it's another Stanford CS PhD student that's dropping out to go create a startup, but they don't quite understand like kind of the brass tacks of like what that actually looks like. So for the technical part of this podcast episode, I think we should rather just deep dive into like kind of like some of the blogs that you have set up with Radical Numerics and kind of like how you're tying in some of the actual technical details of how you're going about building Radical Numerics, as opposed to like maybe just like regurgitating information that can already be found publicly on your research papers and stuff like that. And so to that end, let's go ahead and talk about these two blog posts you have. You have these two blog posts, right? You got your first one, Fowling's fast sliding window recurrences for modern AI workloads. Second one, R&D1, simple scalable AR to diffusion conversion. So these ones are both pretty recent, right? Like, I mean, as of the day of this, like the podcast being released, right? We're calling it basically like a week, pretty much, like 10 days, like within 10 days of both of these things being published. So we're like very much like pre-seed on this, like from the get-go. Like tell us a little bit about kind of like these two blog posts. Tell us a little bit about kind of your strategy and posting these blog posts publicly, and then tell us a little bit about kind of like how these blog posts and the research that you're doing connects back to your mission.
Yeah. So both of these connect. So talking about bringing costs down, automation, and finding new domains. When you think about automation, so the first thing is to connect also to your earlier comment about companies not investing in infrastructure. I think there are probably two buckets of AI companies in terms of tech. There are companies that just work at the agent layer and companies that do both. It's extremely important to prove that you have the right to win at both. I think it's not necessarily that I believe models to be valuable on their own. I think I have a lot of experience with trying to sell models, and it's tough. It's a tough market. We know models themselves are not that valuable anymore. And it's more about having more tools in your toolbox. If you can build models and the layers on top, you can do a lot more. You can bring a lot more customization. You can solve a lot more problems. So it is important for us to show that we can work as a team, as a company, right? That we can work at non-trivial scales that require non-trivial infrastructure. So this is the first piece with R&D1 was to prove this as a company, and B, explore, show how you can get to a new variant of a model, in this case, a new training objective. Like diffusion models are not necessarily, shouldn't be necessarily thought of as different architectures, more so different training objectives, how you can evaluate whether that's a good idea or not quickly with these conversion techniques as another tool in the toolbox of reducing overall cost, right? So it was a combination of two, plus what I was mentioning before, trying to preserve the culture of an AI lab and pursuing interesting work, which I think is important. You mentioned thinking machines. Like I admire. This could be kind of strategic choice to lead, before a thinker, to lead with fairly, call niche, like highly focused researchy blog posts. Clearly a strategy kind of to let researchers express their expertise and connect with the community. This is important to us. We'll keep doing research and sharing as you've seen in these two blog posts. The second one is about systems and architectures. Like another piece that is key in bringing the cost down is understanding how you can attack model architectures, how you can optimize model architectures for specific workloads, really understanding what it means to optimize a model architecture. I think for many that dabble a little bit in model architectures, I think most people, there was a time in 2023, 2024, the model architecture was, the talk of the town. And these subquadratic versus quadratic, always this, quadratic scaling of attention. That is a very kind of myopic way to understand architectures. You have to understand how a model is deployed, where, and optimize the architecture for that specifically. And Liquid is doing a great job with that. For example, understanding that focusing on edge deployment on shorter context requires an architecture that is substantially different from a long context cloud model, SSM hybrid, whatever your weapon of choice is. So this is a showcase that we understand these nuances, and again, a tool to allow our AI experts to express themselves. Fundamentally, I talked about automation. I'm not going to get into too much detail at the moment. We'll be sharing more about what we mean by automation and doing AI with AI. But fundamentally, these are forcing functions. So I believe, like any company selling automation or agents for X or Y, whether that's recruiting or spreadsheet management or whatever that may be, you have to be the expert that you're trying to automate or accelerate. And so if you're a company trying to build automation infrastructure for AI, you better be an AI company that knows how to build frontier models and knows how to do the systems work manually first. Right? So these are forcing functions that we have built with automation tooling. Right? So we've been able to do this so fast. In the company's been around for a few months only, and I think we achieved pretty remarkable results, including the things that we have released and not released by that time. We have used some of this automation tooling. It is a forcing function. I don't think you can build automation infrastructure in a vacuum. This is the TLDR. Maybe talking about diffusion specifically, because I think diffusion got a lot of people excited, and you had Stefan on the podcast. Mm-hmm. I think my two cents on diffusion for language specifically is that it is certainly a tool in the toolbox of LLM builders that will become more popular than now. I don't think it will displace AR models completely. I think right now we're seeing that the truly kind of frontier diffusion models are really hybrids of the two, via block diffusion and some of these other techniques. And my view on this is that it's effectively a more elegant way to bake in parallelism rather than doing autoregressive plus a whole host of inference time tricks like speculative decoding to try and take, get more tokens out of the model in parallel. to put more weight on the compute rather than the memory movement in certain inference deployment scenarios. It's a more elegant way to bake that into the model, and it does open up new algorithms for test time scaling and inference. I don't believe it's a fundamental kind of complete paradigm shift. Right? It's a slightly, much like hybrids themselves. Hybrid architectures are not really a paradigm shift. They're certainly an improvement on the Pareto frontier. I think diffusion models fall into that category. So it's extremely important, again, as an AI company building AI systems to master the technology that we believe is going to be at the frontier.
Awesome. Okay. So let me underscore a few things here, right? So, obviously at Delta we have a super high bar for technical talent and for the quality of people we bring on our podcast, and more importantly also for the quality of people we have in our community. And the entire reason we have this is primarily because there's so much noise, not just in the Bay Area, but just globally. And by the way, this amount of noise is only going to increase quite rapidly. I'm sure the PhD admissions committees everywhere have been facing this, but trust it's going to get way worse in the next 5 years. And so like really kind of identifying like startups that actually know what they're doing versus are just trying to like basically get a lot of money in secondary is a quite important distinction. It's definitely something that we care very deeply about. I think like I liked a lot of the things that you said, right? Like thinking about things from first principles, writing blog posts, genuinely sort of like interacting and doing that is great. And it's also like super clear that you guys like know what you're doing, have like a super great team, so on and so forth. And so because of all of this, on top of the fact that of course like we're fans with Stefano and like also like appreciate like a lot of like kind of like how real you are with this. Well, we'll give you like a chance to kind of shout out like a few things, okay? Like we'll give you a chance to shout out number one, the other members of your team, so the other co-founders, and maybe briefly you want to give like a synopsis of like Eric and everybody else and like kind of like their backgrounds. Two, like what specifically you're hiring for. So like what roles, like maybe like in pick three that you want to like fill out as fast as possible. And then three, kind of like what your pitch is to people joining you guys. Specifically, let's say joining you guys over thinking machines and joining you guys over Anthropic, which I'd say are kind of the two main decisions people are making, which is like kind of like why Radical Numerics over another sort of top AI startup at the sort of frontier model land versus like a larger company that's a rocket ship, and gonna like hit, is already at a $143 billion valuation, will probably hit 300 billion relatively soon. And so like I'd say like those three things. Anything that you want to sort of shout out about Radical and stuff like that, feel free to.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, so much for that. So we have four co-founders. I had mentioned Stefano before. This is a story I typically use as an icebreaker because it's cool. So Stefano and I grew up in the same town in Italy, and we went to the same high school. And high school in Italy is slightly different than the US. You're actually stuck with the same 20-ish people for 5 years. And
Yeah.
so he was sitting behind me. So if we got to this point, we got to start in AI research together and so on. There's a good chance we can get through this as well together. The other two I also known for years. Armin and Eric I met at Stanford, both at Easy Research, Chris Ray's group. Both amazing people. Armin was doing his postdoc at the time. Eric was working on SSMs when I got around. And with Eric, I worked on all the Evo line of work, so bringing new architectures to genomics modeling at scale, Evo 1 and Evo 2, an amazing collaboration with the Arc Institute and then NVIDIA, training on thousands of GPUs. The new architectures was it was a super fun and stressful period, bringing that to life. And then Armin also worked throughout the years. He was with me at Liquid, in our team at Liquid. Amazing human all around, super reliable. I love working with Armin. And yeah, so this is the core team we have. We built a strong network over the years. There's a lot of Stanford and other Frontier Lab people that we've just been collaborating, and so that's how we got started with the kind of the kernel of the company. I find honestly there is so much. So it's one thing competing with other AI companies, maybe kind of the frontier or to be frontier-ish companies like thinking machines. I find there are a couple of tools I think this being extremely transparent and mentioning culture first. I think I find that a lot of the Frontier Lab folks in particular are extremely sensitive to culture issues. You can imagine why. There's all this. We know all the stories, right? We know the tendency towards being more and more closed. All the politics and competing over compute and credit and all that. I find a lot of folks with a clear mission, focus on culture, and access to resources. We have access to resources and a network. Have been enough to sway some of these folks. Also, the automation angle, the unique automation angle that we're taking resonates a lot with these people. The as well as this promise that they'll be able to express. I subscribe themselves, right? Their work. I subscribe to the philosophy that it's good to build a solid company. You have to let people shine, let them get credit. If they're paid enough, a lot, that's usually enough. Like they're happy, right? Even if they get an insane poaching offer from MSL, that's usually enough. I think that's also been OpenAI's playbook, and that has worked clearly well for them. Yeah, so that's a bit on the philosophy. I think the roles right now we're scaling up all the AI functions, the core AI functions. We have a strong pre-training team. We're trying to hire amazing data people and post-training RL, as well as agents. People have been building agents, kind of builders and hackers on the agent layer. Always looking for amazing infrastructure and ML systems people. Even on the more junior side, I had super amazing experiences mentoring people, and I mean, can you imagine the pool at Stanford with good fundamentals and excitement. You can get them up to speed fairly quickly, and so we were definitely open to these mentorship mentees positions there. What else is there to say? I think that's
Yeah,
pretty
no,
much
I
it.
think I think that's I think it's pretty comprehensive. Okay, a few things I want to highlight here. Number one, I think it's a very good decision that you guys are open to basically like supporting. Basically, so at Delta we call this high slope talent. Basically what that means is like traditionally in startups, right? Like there's kind of the age old advice of like, oh, go like hire people with 3+ years of experience. But there are like a few people that are like truly exceptional where like even if they're new grads or like less than a year of work experience or whatever, if you sort of give them the like investment and sort of runway, it's kind of like trains versus planes. Like trains are sort of moving in some like linear motion, right? Planes sort of have this like acceleration. They sort of just take off to the moon like a rocket ship. So like really you sort of find the right people that are planes, not trains, and like give them a shot. They can like really, 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 really like blow people away. And so I think that's great. Completely agreed on the culture thing, right? Like I think this is really big. This is really, really, really big, right? Like, Rashad was on the podcast, and he was at MSL, classic these days. And then he left and joined Periodic, right? And like part of this was because of, his relationship with Liam Fetus and things like that. But like really honestly, it is also just like working at a frontier model lab, especially like a massive one, like an MSL, OpenAI, Anthropic, whatever, is like I think at this point it's like maybe like less unique, than like solving a mission that you're really excited about with a small team of really really cool people that are doing something interesting. And I think like what Periodic's doing is just like so different than what all the frontier model labs are doing. They're just very compelling to like explore that, right? And so I think a large part of it is just like this natural curiosity, and just like scientists are scientists, right? So like they have this natural curiosity to work on something that's exciting and interesting and hard. And so I think in many ways, kind of like the same way we sort of look at Periodic and look at how they're applying like AI for material science, I think in many ways like Radical Numerics sort of like reminds us of like the same thing, except just like a different application, different field, combined with kind of this rigor and intensity of like actually like from the ground up thinking from first principles, like how do we actually like do great research, And then how do we take that and then like translate that to creating a great product? So I don't know. I think there's a lot of radical numerics that smells a lot like thinking machines and also smells a lot like periodic. And so we're like we're ecstatic that you were able to come on the podcast. And so like literally if you're listening and any of this stuff sounds interesting, go to the Radical Numerics website and it'll be in the comments below. Go apply. Like even if you're not 100% sure you want to join, just apply. Because like honestly like I think the thing like here's the thing with like joining startups, right? It's like you basically want to join a startup where whoever your boss is or whoever you're reporting to is somebody that you can learn a lot from, right? I think in this conversation, I hope, I sincerely hope that you have understood, right? That yeah, like Michael is not like not is not an average Joe, right? Like he's not your average PhD student. Stanford he has PhD dropout. Like he knows what he's doing, right? And he really has thought really critically about how to actually build a company that can sustain. This is a brutally competitive area, right? Like building a strong, successful frontier model lab startup is like brutally, brutally, brutally competitive. Like everyone and their mom is trying to do this right now. So very few people actually know what they're doing, and like I think kind of the argument is it seems like actually kind of does know what he's doing. And so like this could be an opportunity to get in at something that's similar to a thinking machines or periodic before it's sort of hit the status and like growth of a thinking machines or periodic. And so if that sounds exciting to you and that sounds interesting, then you should probably apply. And then just kind of see how things go, right? So like don't like just like don't be like, oh, like I'm not gonna join. Well, I mean, you never know, right? Like life is very unpredictable, right? Like who knows whether MSL will still be alive tomorrow or OpenAI will still be alive tomorrow. Like it's always worth to just sort of like keep your mind open and think through things. And yeah,
And,
so
and
like
don't wait too long, 'cause we have pretty
yeah,
big things coming.
yeah. Don't wait too long. And yeah, dude, like Stanford's obviously great. I also want to like I want to like underscore like hazy research. Okay, for people in the audience, like I sincerely hope that you guys know what hazy research is. It's HAZY research. It's part of what I like to call the Chris Ray Mafia, which is very similar to the Scale AI Mafia, the Databricks Mafia, the Stripe Mafia, and now soon to be the OpenAI Mafia, right, and the PayPal Mafia. Like you kind of see this group of people that leave a given organization and go off and do a lot of really great things, right? So like in the case of Scale, right, there's tons of really great startups that have now been created, right, including like Modal, which for instance Akshat Bubna, right, he had joined Scale, Netic, which Melissa Tokmak also from Scale, right? You look at Databricks, then there you see things like Predabase, for instance. You see things. There's like infinite new startups. Sphinx, for instance, in New York City, where like Jamie was also at Databricks. So you sort of see these patterns. And yeah, the Chris Ray's lab, my goodness, and Stefano's lab, they are just printing high quality startups. So definitely like pay attention basically, right? Like if you're trying to join like an interesting startup and you really care about ML systems, like please pay attention, right? And like think critically about like where these people are coming from and build those relationships. I think one good thing about the podcast is like so clearly it seems like you're pretty well networked at Stanford. Like the podcast obviously like we have a reach that hits CMU, which has tons and tons and tons of talent that's just massively undertapped in Pittsburgh. And we'll hopefully hear about this and like maybe move from Pittsburgh and try to actually do something in the Bay Area and get things moving. And people at Berkeley and MIT and even really like IIT Bombay, Tsinghua, Peking, Fudan, like KAIST, right? Like all of these other really great schools internationally. And like I think that really is kind of the benefit of the podcast is you're basically tapping into an international community with like in one-time asynchronous video form that like lives forever, right? And I think that's like kind of a very powerful medium to have. So yeah, I mean we're like super 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 happy that you sort of took the chance to come on the podcast, and we're super super excited to see you guys continue to grow, and we're pretty bullish. We're pretty bullish. It is a very competitive area, but number one, we're huge fans of Stefano. Number two, we're huge fans of you. And number three, we think that there is like so much exciting work to be done here. So yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast. And yeah, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for all the kind words, and we'll try not to disappoint.